My name is John McKeon. I'm the moderator for the Teradata River, and today we have with us Sara Costello. She is the Senior Director of Relationship Marketing at Sylvan Learning. Sara, welcome to the River.
Hey, John, how are you?
I'm doing great. Sara, you are in a really interesting business, Sylvan Learning. And part of that business, of course, with any business, is integrating the web activities. And you are going to be speaking at the upcoming Partners Conference about a web lead conversion project that you had recently. Tell me a little bit about what drove that project from a customer perspective and also from a business perspective.
Sure. It's actually something that we began over 3 years ago. And for those who aren't familiar with Sylvan, we are a network of franchise centers, learning centers, and we're in U.S. and Canada primarily, and we have close to 900 centers. So at the beginning of this project, we had 900 centers that were attempting to follow up and work on conversion of their web leads from sylvanlearning.com in all of the ways that they had at their disposal, which included perhaps some type of email, a lot of phone follow-up, but essentially the net, there was a very inconsistent approach to working on conversion of web leads. And from a customer standpoint, when you submit a web lead over our website, the expectation is follow-up. And from a business standpoint, we need to maximize our investment that it took in our advertising to get people to our website and to submit a web form. And so we need to get the most enrollments out of those web leads as possible. So we had a bit of a mismatch in terms of we wanted to drive conversion, yet we were asking all of our operators to work on and carry the load for all of the follow-up activities that would drive conversion. So we really needed something that would create a consistent communications approach to follow-up, as well as all of the nice things like represent our brand well, say all the messaging that we believe would drive conversion, etc. So in the end, what we did is built a pretty rudimentary automated email follow-up solution that would kick in directly following in the 10 days following when somebody would submit a web lead. And the results were, we had over 500 centers in that pilot, and we had a very structured test in terms of having control groups in place, random sampling of who would get what, etc. But the net that was very clear from the beginning is that when we added a base of follow-up to the phone work that centers were doing on their own, and it was consistent and it was a great representation of our brand, we saw incremental lift. So right then, we began to think a little bit bigger and thought, okay, how can we take that same approach and apply it across the full customer life cycle? So that one web lead conversion project and the learnings that we got from it were significant in terms of driving our strategy from that point over 3 years ago to where we are now today, where we have a lot of that same approach going across to customers in the full life cycle.
So, Sara, but how do you really scale something like that? What were the mechanics around looking at it in a broader context?
You know, looking back at it now, certainly we had a huge shift because our legacy technology systems would not have enabled us to scale that. And I'm sure many people have that same situation where you have a lot of different parts that don't talk to each other and would make a program like that not scalable. We were fortunate enough at the time to attach ourselves onto a project that was creating a new CRM for our centers. And as that CRM was developed, what our piece was from a campaigning standpoint was the marketing arm of that. We always viewed it as two parts of a full solution. So the CRM solution, as it scaled out, carried our campaigning solution with it. And that solution is part of what's covered in our license agreement, that it's a requirement for our centers to adopt. So of all of the challenges that you have with a franchise system, if anybody's listening to this, they can probably link into this. And certainly we have done enormous efforts to sell the value of this, to create understanding, to train and set expectations. But I will be candid and say that our net capability to scale this came from the capability to mandate the CRM that was put into all of our centers, or the strong majority of our centers, that carried an integration with our campaigning piece that enabled us to scale out these campaigns.
So, Sara, what were the most effective pieces of this? And also, how did you actually measure the benefits that you achieved from this?
So I'll address the measurement piece first. We use some pretty typical techniques. The solution that we're using enables us to set up quantifiable control groups. And so we measure against our control groups and we look for incremental lift that carries all the way through from wherever somebody starts in the funnel, the sales funnel. So if you're high up in the sales funnel, we need to measure incremental enrollments, and that's several steps forward, as being supported by the campaigning. So we employ typical direct marketing practices to understand the incrementality of our efforts, as well as taking that down through to not only incremental enrollments, but how much revenue did that drive, how much royalties did that drive, and what is the ROI for the cost of the solution. From a campaign structure standpoint and finding points in our life cycle that are optimal where to put this in place, when we created our CRM, we fully recognized the need to build a life cycle that had more coverage all the way with a lot of customer touch points. So like our website, our toll-free phone solution, where is somebody in the life cycle when they get to a point of actually speaking with someone at a center. So we created what we call a customer state model. And each of the customer states is marked by a specific behavior by the customer. So have they visited our website? Have they talked to somebody in a center? Did they book a next step? Did they show up for that next step? Did they enroll with us? It's purposeful in that way because the campaigns that we find most effective are triggered based on those customer behaviors. So in order to kickstart them or keep them moving down those pretty particular steps to the customer life cycle, that's where we put campaigns. So if you look at this linearly, that's also where you see fallout and we see loss of conversion. So we're seeking to put campaigns in as a stopgap to loss of conversion and keep more people moving through the sales funnel. Typical example is when a customer calls, we call them an inquiry. They speak to somebody in a center, they ask about services, but they're not quite ready to move forward and book an appointment. We have a campaign placed right there that's triggered by certain things that we do or don't see in the CRM that tell us that they did or didn't move forward. And it adds communication right away. So the same day, there's email and postal mail follow-up that gets triggered over the next 10 days. And then centers will typically follow up via phone. So we have a comprehensive multi-channel follow-up program that is working right when someone is still in market. So that business need of capturing and taking advantage of people's urgency after they've talked to a center, we knew that we needed to add some support materials there. It's a pretty simple, effective campaign. It's based on business logic that's easy to see. We knew we had a problem there. We plugged the hole, and we are measuring incremental enrollments out of that campaign. So we've been fully scaled for over a year. Just optimizing these simple pressure points and adding campaigns there is still where we are today, and it's probably where we'll be for quite a while. But it's proving effective for us.
Sara, this was a huge project for you guys. What were the highs and lows? What hindsight 2020 learning you think came out of this?
The biggest challenges, which led to the biggest highs, was to get buy-in from our executives and our franchisees. So even though I said earlier that we're able to scale because this is pretty much a mandatory program, you still have to get buy-in. And so getting the buy-in that we needed this solution, because it is an enterprise solution, we're running Aprimo Marketing Studio at the enterprise level. Huge change management issues and getting people's heads wrapped around that. So when we got the sign-off on the SIP, enormous moment of big, huge high. I think that some of the lows come after you begin implementation and you start understanding how little you understand about how to run an enterprise solution like this. But as long as you have some guidance, we worked with an implementation consultant. I think there was big value in that. As long as you can have someone to help guide you along and you can continue with your executive commitment to implement something like that, you're going to move past that. I think by far the biggest high is when our team here and our franchisees and centers see customers responding to these communications. So whether it's an email that gets replied to and the center sees the reply with our campaigning email as the attachment that they're replying to, and the customer has responded very positively, thank you for the follow-up, I'd like to take a next step. When we see that, it's a huge reward because we know that what we're doing is working. And to get back to our mission at Sylvan, our mission is to equip as many students to achieve as possible. So the business need, improving conversion, really translates to helping more kids. And that's super satisfying for us.
That sounds great. As Sara Costello, Senior Director for Relationship Marketing at Sylvan Learning, she is speaking at the upcoming Partners Conference. Sarah's going to have a great session. Not only is going to be the details of what they went through, but the 2020 learning and what happens when you really try and implement an enterprise level solution. Sara, thank you so much.